Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part, where we are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, back to our once-a-week program, Wednesdays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or thereabouts. John Saponaro holding things down out in sunny, warm Burbank, California. I'm sure things are not exactly the same for my co-host, Matt Ibanez, back in New Jersey. Ibby, before we get into all that, we got a great guest today for the first portion of the show. How are you feeling, man?
Well, you had to throw in the fact that it's warm by you, John. It's not the warmest by me, but I appreciate you asking me how I'm doing. Granted, you do have some, it's a little bit different this week because we have a little bit more Jersey representing in the building, which is a good thing.
That's true.
But all things considered, I'm doing well, and I'm excited because, as always, it's Wednesday. The red light's on. We're talking our New York Mets, and the chat's filling up. We already got 93 people rolling in, and I expect the number to keep on climbing as we continue. And I'm sure, based off of our guest today and the stuff that he was able to talk about prior to being on the show, I'm sure some people in the comments are going to have some curiosity, some questions. So we'll get into all that good stuff. And as 100 people are in the room, I say it's about time. Let's get started. Let's have a show.
Absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes you want to have a guest on for a while. And this person and I had talked for a little bit trying to get it set up. And then, of course, the winter meetings, he's super busy with that. But sometimes it just happens at the right time. And he was in the news on Twitter this morning, kind of unbreaking a story, if you will. I'm not sure how big of a story it was to begin with, a minor league signing potentially. But I am thrilled to have this guy on. So without further ado, let's bring him in. It is Manny Gomez at MannyGo3 on Twitter. He covers the Mets beat for the NJ Advance and NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Manny, thank you so much for being here. How you doing, man?
Thank you, Manny.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you. First of all, real quick, before we get into the hard-hitting stuff, how was the winter meetings going down into Dallas? You know, like a lot of splashes made, a lot of crazy stuff, but then it seemed like it was peaks and valleys at the winter meetings. Some speed up of the market, some slow down, some hot stove, some cold stove. So what was your experience like down there last week?
Apparently, compared to other winter meetings, this one was pretty active, especially for the Mets. I mean, on the eve of the winter meeting, Sunday night, we get the Juan Soto news. That kind of stirred things up, got things started really fast for us. And then on the Mets side, there was just a lot of rumors. Beyond that, there was another story I unbroke. Jonathan Loaizaga somebody had reported had signed with the Mets. That turned out not to be true. Per a couple of sources, he ended up signing with the Yankees, of course. And we just got a little more insight. It's the first time we were able to talk to David Stearns since the GM meetings, which was pretty brief. And then before that, he held a press conference right after they were eliminated from the postseason. So it was good to just get some insight just to see who the Mets are interested in, what other teams are interested in, you know, who the Mets are going to be competing with for players moving forward and stuff like that. So it was a really cool experience. And my biggest takeaway, aside from Juan Soto, is that it gets cold in Dallas. I had no idea. It was freezing down there.
Texas gets cold, man. I have been in Texas in the summer where it is brutally hot, but in the winter, it can get very, very Very cold. So let's talk about this this Alex Reyes signing that wasn't. It was reported earlier today that the Mets had signed the former All-Star closer of the St. Louis Cardinals to a minor league deal. He hasn't pitched at all, I think, in the majors or the minors since 2021. A lot of different injuries have derailed his career. And then you come out a little bit later and say, hey, calm down, guys. This did not happen at all. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So what can you tell us about, you finding out that it didn't happen and just anything that has come out in the couple hours since you saying, hey, this didn't happen. This has not been the case. The Mets have not signed this player.
So first off, I saw the report, and at first glance, it makes sense. Like, here's a guy who hasn't pitched since 2021, has good stuff, was an all-star. I think he has a sub-3 RA for his career. A reclamation project, exactly what David Stearns likes in a player. A guy with a lot of potential, will sign a short-term deal. He can enter that lab that the Mets have that seems to reinvent pitchers and come out of it shining. So I decided, let me just check up on this first before I write a story. And two separate people immediately said, not true. They have no idea where this person came up with this report. What did happen was that Alex Reyes did have an agreement with the Mets last season. For personal reasons, he didn't sign a contract. So he kind of entered into this limbo period, here where he's how can I phrase this? He's like committed to the Mets, but not a member of the Mets. This was last season. So the Mets so he enters a restricted list. They had to remove him from the restricted list in order for him to become an unrestricted free agent again. And apparently Anthony DeComo just tweeted this out a few minutes ago. That has happened. So he is a free agent again, but he was never officially a member of the Mets, which is why there was never an announcement. It's not on the transactions page, anything like that. So that's essentially it. Really. Non-story, a story that became a story because of some, I don't know if he's a blogger or something, but apparently he people do follow his work, and but it wasn't true. So sorry, guys, it's not that long.
Right.
Listen, appreciate you clearing it up. And this is not exactly, again, with respect to everybody's major league career, this is not earth-shattering news. Look, if Alex Reyes wants to get back to pitching again professionally, I hope that he can physically after all of the injuries that he's dealt with, and whether it's a part of the Mets or another organization, that person should continue on with their career. But again, it's not earth-shattering news here, so it's all good. We're not going to kill the messenger. The other thing I want to bring up really quickly, and I don't want to spend too much time on this with you because I know you don't have a ton of time with us, but you mentioned the Jonathan Loaisiga situation from earlier in the week, and it's something on this show that Ibby and I have talked about a lot, especially in this offseason, but that is people kind of breaking news or pretending to break news for clout. And we think it does a disservice to traditional journalists like yourself. It's really unfair. It makes your job harder. But I also think it's really unfair to even people like us with a podcast platform, because everybody's out there, or these folks are out there trying to jump the line, so to speak, just throwing anything at the wall, see what sticks. They get a lot of traction. Maybe they get more followers, and there's no penalty for that. There used to be this adage. I went to school for broadcasting and journalism that you got to be right. Now it's you got to be first. And so there is just no penalty for coming out here saying whatever you want, never being right, and just being like, and then moving on to the next story, the next offseason. So just as somebody who works in the media, who does all the legwork, does the hard work, has the sources, is a beat reporter, what has this news cycle been like for you over the last couple of years? Because I feel like it's just accelerated to the point of craziness. There was always a little bit of this, but now it's insane. Yeah.
And just one good thing about Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, is
we call it Twitter here.
Twitter. Same here. In its recent iteration is those where people can post corrections on it. Like those, that's one of the good things about it. But to answer your question, essentially, these kinds of reports has made the job a little bit harder. It's cut into how interact with interactions between players and reporters. I think I'm trying to really choose my words here. with the way things have been going recently, there's not a lot of trust in media, and we have to kind of go out of our way to make sure that stories are true, because if proof false, like it kind of lends into the narrative that we're just chasing clout. And I mean, I'm an example, and I don't know if the other Mets beat reporters, but I hope that I can speak for them. They all do their due diligence. The guys that were in the clubhouse with, they're all checking sources, double, triple checking sources. I went for 2 people on different sides told me the same thing. So that's how I come up with my stories. Otherwise, I could be out there saying, yeah, Pete Alonso signing with the Mets tomorrow, put it in the books, and not check it and just get a bunch of followers. All of a sudden, I'm a trusted source. Like, so I hope I'm answering your question, but
yeah, absolutely.
It's made things a little bit more difficult in the clubhouse, but fortunately we have spring training where we can kind of build relationships. We have throughout the season, they see your face, they read your stuff, and you can build trust that way. So that's essentially it.
I've found your stuff maybe, I don't know what it was, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that. And you've quickly become one of my favorite follows as far as the Mets beat is concerned. We've had Will Salmon on this show multiple times, who also does a great job.
He's awesome.
AB and I at the Queens Baseball Convention have interacted with other folks on the Mets beat that have not been a part of this show, but we appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. It's not an easy job. At times it's a thankless job, which we understand that. People are like, how come Manny Gomez didn't have it first if he's so connected? It's like, dude, I don't know, dude. Like, stop it. Just be happy that the news came out and your team signed a player or whatever the case is. But and I don't want to for answering honestly.
And I don't want to come off as like I'm complaining. Like, I get paid to watch baseball. Like, it's a dream job, Yes, the days are long. You get home late. You miss events. You miss vacations with your family, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what I tell people is, I'm sitting in a press box and I'm watching baseball. Like, I can't complain. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
That's essentially it.
I do have a question real quick, because I'm curious when it comes to like being in the position that you are and the sources that you have. When you have someone, and this has been a name that's been popping up a lot lately over the last, I want to say probably 2 years, and that's a former player with someone like Carlos Baerga, who decides to come out and always say these things, and people kind of take it, and some people run with it and they repost it. What is it like when you see something like that from a former player? Do you automatically see it and like automatically check sources and go that route to make sure, like, is this real? Is this fake? Is he just posting these things? Because I feel like a former player, you're like, oh, they're connected, they know people or whatever. But a lot of times, I mean, maybe he was right a handful of times, but more times wrong than not. So, like, when you see something like that, how do you go about it?
I think with Carlos Baerga's reporting, I think a lot of things get lost in translation and gets lost in different dialects. So I am I am Hispanic. I'm of Dominican descent. I grew up in Washington Heights, up in Manhattan. And so there's a lot of nuance when you're speaking Spanish in different dialects. Like Dominicans will say things a certain way that's different than Puerto Ricans will say it, that's different than a Venezuelan would say it. And when I listen to Carlos Baerga's reporting, a lot of times it's when you hit that translation button on Twitter, it may sound like he's saying he's reporting a contract is being signed or anything, and that's not necessarily what he means when you listen to the story. So I always make sure I'm listening to it. If I hear something, I go into it, I listen to it. If he is saying, this person is signing such contract or whatever, then I will start checking with my sources. Hey, is this true? Can you confirm this? And so on and so forth. If not, I just move on. But what I can say about Carlos Baerga is he does visit the Mets every so often. He was a former Met in the past. I know that he's close with Carlos Beltran, who's in the front office. So I do tend to lend a little more. I put more weight into what he's saying just because of that. Because who knows? Maybe him and Beltran had a conversation, and I've had multiple conversations with Carlos Beltran. He's very forthcoming. He's very open. Like, he doesn't hold back. So I'm like, okay, maybe he knows something. Let me check on this, and then I'll do my due diligence from there. But yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily say, because you're right. There was a report recently from Carlos Baerga that was out. Can't remember exactly what it was, and one of my editors checked in with me and said, "Hey, why haven't you written this?" And I listened to it and I said, "Well, because I don't think that's what he's saying. Like that's
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
Okay.
this isn't what's happening here." And it turned out that wasn't what was happening. So had I just written that, like I would have looked like a complete moron. You know what I mean? So, and I can't remember what it was. It was like a month ago. It was before the winter meetings. But yeah.
It's honestly, it's good advice for anybody, even the fans who are kind of waiting with bated breath, to just kind of temper your expectations and then do your own work. Now, obviously, a fan who watches our show, and even us to some extent, we don't have the connection that you might have where you have like a source in the organization or whatever the case is. We have to check it ourselves, but it's just, hey, wait for the guy. Like we always say, wait for the passing bomb. It's hey, wait for Manny Gomez to say something because you know you can trust him. Wait for Will Salmon to say something because you know you could trust him. Don't just run with every story, especially when people are chasing clout. So I said we weren't going to spend too much time on this. Here we are, 10, 12 minutes on it. Let's talk a little bit of Mets. You mentioned this guy already. Pete Alonso is a very curious case for the New York Mets. If you follow me on Twitter, which I know you do, and I appreciate that, I'm a big fan of Pete Alonso. I think he makes sense from a baseball standpoint. I think he makes sense from a vibes and culture and Mets legacy and Mets history standpoint. But I don't think he's a player that you go all in on, a la Juan Soto. There's an upper limit to almost every free agent negotiation. Soto is the outlier on that. He's the exception, not the rule. And so where do things stand with the Mets and Pete Alonso?
So I'm with you. I think Pete Alonso makes total sense for the Mets at this point, but I think this is in the hands. I think Juan Soto was, not saying David Stearns didn't play a role in the signing of Juan Soto, but I think Steve Cohen kind of took the wheel on that one.
Agreed.
Inviting him to his home, bringing Alex's family along, the Hispanic connection there. All of that helped into signing that massive contract. Like I can't see David Stearns offering that kind of money to someone. Right. I think that was all Cohen. With Pete Alonso, I think David Stearns is the one who's in charge here, and he's playing it pretty smart. He's allowing Pete Alonso to test the market, which he's doing, and I think he knows that the market isn't what Pete Alonso and Scott Boras were expecting it to be. I think Pete Alonso wanted a contract in the 200s. I don't think that's going to happen. He's not Freddie Freeman. He's not Matt Olson. But Pete Alonso is an elite first baseman. I think he does have value in the Mets. I think that's going to matter to Steve Cohen in the end. Steve Cohen, someone who's kind of brought the lure back to the Mets with retiring numbers here with Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden this year. They're retiring David Wright's number. I think it matters to him that Pete Alonso's 26 homers away from tying Darryl Strawberry's all-time Mets home run record. I think it matters to him that Pete Alonso, if he stays healthy, will hit probably 500, maybe 600 home runs in his career. That's a Mets jersey that'll be up in Cooperstown. That's a number that'll be retired 20, 30 years from now. I think that matters to Steve Cohen. So I think they might overpay for him. But I don't think it's going to be what Alonso's looking for. I do think my prediction is that he does come back, but I think he lands somewhere within the $25-26 million range. And also, I just wrote a story earlier this morning. I think that the Yankees trading for Cody Bellinger kind of helps the Mets a little bit also because the Yankees were linked to Pete Alonso. I know that Bellinger is expected to play the outfield. But with the signings that they've had so far, the Yankees, I'm talking about Max Fried and Cody Bellinger, we're close to $54 million in signings there for the Yankees. And their CBT tax payrolls nearing 300 already, which is where Hal Steinbrenner wants to be. So I think that hurts the market for Pete Alonso. It hurts the market for Christian Walker. And it kind of helps the Mets who want a first baseman or they want a third baseman.
I'm so happy you said that because I'm just going to pat myself on the back for a second because I said yesterday when the Yankees traded for Bellinger that it takes a suitor off of the market. A lot of people jumped down my throat in the comments saying, didn't you see he's going to play center field? He's not playing first base. It doesn't matter. And I said, it's not just the position. It's the money. It's a monetary issue here. They give Fried the big deal. They take on Bellinger's contract and to a lesser extent, the Devin Williams trade. I know it's just 1 year and it's not a ton of money, but when you add that to the 30+ million on Judge, the 30+ million on Giancarlo, the 27 million with Carlos Rodon.
Yep.
It all adds up, and I just can't see them. Pete's not going to take a 1-year pillow contract.
No.
So to me, it just looks like, okay, well, this is another team that's out on him. Now you could say maybe it opens the Cubs up to go in on Pete, but I don't see it, man. To me, Manny, I think it's Pete and the Mets. It makes so much sense for him. It makes so much sense for the team.
I think so too. And there's value. There's more value to Pete, but aside from the fact that he's a power hitter, he's a valued member of that clubhouse. His teammates love him. He had this. He's of Italian descent, and a fan gave him this red pepper, which I guess in Sicily has some representation to it. I don't know if either of you are Italian or Sicilian, but I went up to him and I asked him, "Hey, what's up with that red pepper up in your locker?" And he's like, "Well, it wards off evil spirits." Like jokingly, this guy is like one of the funniest guys in the clubhouse. Next thing I know, as the weeks go on, there's red peppers in basically everyone's locker around the Mets, in the Mets clubhouse. And, that's Pete Alonso. He's bringing guys in. He's one of the favorite members of that clubhouse. He's a funny, quirky guy. And I think that means something to them. I think it means something to his teammates and for the Mets to see, oh, look, we're going to retain one of our guys. He's valuable to us. And that might cost the Mets a little more money, but I still think in the end, they're going to end up getting him for less than what he's asking for. And I think I think it's the right move. Can you just imagine a lineup with Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, and a potential Mark Vientos? If he can repeat what he did last year, you have 3 guys who can hit 30, 40 home runs in a lineup. That's pretty dangerous.
I mean, absolutely. Sorry, yeah. I was reaching for my red pepper that I'm actively wearing right now. It's not red, but I don't know if you guys can see it. And yes, I am of Italian descent. Yes, we do have one hanging up in the kitchen, my girlfriend and I, and I'm wearing one right now. So yeah, vibes, man. It's all vibes.
Yeah.
I am glad that you said what you said, Manny, when it came to Pete and the contract, because I had been saying for the longest time on this show that I felt like the market just wasn't going to be the way that everyone else thought that it might be, and saying, oh, Pete's going to get 200 million, he's going to get 175 million. I was like the curmudgeon on the show saying, like, guys, I think he's lucky if he got 135. I think he's very lucky. If he got 120, he got lucky. And as this continues to go on, I feel like the number's almost dropping, but I do agree with you when you say, hey, maybe the Mets bite the bullet just to close the deal and throw on, a couple extra million or that extra year, whatever it may be. But I do agree with you 1000% when you say that Cohen was the one driving the ship on Soto and the rest is on David. And I really think that he is someone that I don't want to say is eliminating the fandom of people, or he's trying to take away the fandom of Steve Cohen, but I do think he's trying to bring reason to some things. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if it's like, look, we think, and the numbers dictate and say this is where his numbers are going at this age. And while I do agree with you that I think from a vibes perspective, a legacy perspective, the home runs, retaining your own, I think all those things apply. But I do believe that the Mets have a number in mind, and I wouldn't be shocked if they are steadfast on that number. Yeah. But based off of the way that the market is going, I do think that it could end up getting close to, or they can end up closing somewhere within the area of whatever that number is. Because you're right, it does make too much sense.
Yeah, and just there's leverage too. I mean,
right.
There's also next year's market where Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will be available. So, and there's also players that you can sign to short-term contracts. You could go after Paul Goldschmidt, give him a 1-year deal. You can go after Carlos Santana.
He's been my guy. He's my pivot guy. Yeah. If they don't want to go for Pete and they want to try to get in on Vlad, just Santana on a 1-year deal makes sense.
Exactly. Go Santana. He's one of the best defensive first basemen. He's going to get him base a ton.
Still can hit too.
He can still hit. He could hit one out. So there's leverage there too. I mean, the Mets could, if Boris comes to the Mets and says we want X amount of dollars, the Mets can say, hey, look, that's just too much. We can go in this direction, or we could just wait for next year, or we could just go after Christian Walker for 3 years. And, then Pete's kind of, I don't know if you guys curse in this podcast, but
it's fine. Yeah.
Out of luck.
That's fine. You can. Yeah, it's good. You're good.
So I think the Mets have, I think what David Stearns has shown in 2 years, I didn't follow him so much in Milwaukee. Will Salmon is a good person to talk to because he did cover the Brewers for a while, and he's with the Mets now. So he's been following David Stearns for a long time. And what I'm seeing from David Stearns is that he's extremely smart. This guy is like, he rebuilt the bullpen last season, mid-season, left 2 guys in there and converted that Mets bullpen, which was horrific, into one of the best in baseball. He knows what he has in the Mets and their pitching program with Jeff Hefner. Not Jeff.
Jeremy
Hefner. Sorry. And he's not going to overpay for guys aside from Juan Soto. But Juan Soto is a once in a generation player. He's a 26-year-old player who's he was compared to Ted Williams, for Christ's sake. Like you had to blow it out of the water for a player like that. So I think the Mets are in good hands here. And just to go back with I think one of you made a comment about the Yankees and the money situation. It just goes to show it's a different era now. If George Steinbrenner were alive, this bidding war would have been a lot crazier than it is now. I think the Mets have that guy now who's going to go all in for a player that he wants. And he's turning Queens into a place that players want to actually go and play for, So, good time to be a Met fan for you guys.
Absolutely. And before, obviously, I know we're running close on the time when you got to get out of here, Manny. But the one thing I wanted to bring up is you mentioned how you are of Dominican descent. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard you say your name. You were at the Juan Soto presser, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember I heard your name. I was like,
you asked. I'm not just saying this to blow smoke because you're on our show. You asked a great question. Press conference.
Did ask a great question. But what I wanted to ask you was, being Dominican, you're saying you're from Washington Heights, and knowing what the population of Dominican people is in New York, what do you think? First of all, what was the vibe like in that room when that presser was happening? And the follow-up is, what do you think a player of the magnitude, I should say, of a Juan Soto, being Dominican, being in New York, what do you think he can bring to this club, not only on the baseball field, but off of it as well?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge for the city. The Mets have been a team that has embraced Dominicans for a long time. Omar Minaya is the first Latino GM. He's of Dominican descent. When he brought in all those players, Pedro Martinez, there was a bunch of players. There was
Fernando Tatis Sr. he brought in.
There was a time there where people were trying to accuse the Mets of reverse racism, like, oh, you're too Hispanic. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
The whole Los Mets thing. I remember that. Yeah, right. I do.
But, the Mets have an annual concert with I don't know if the Mets are the ones that put it on, but it is at Citi Field. It used to be at Shea Stadium with famous Dominican artists. So the Mets have always embraced Dominicans, which helps, obviously. And just Juan Soto, he's a once in a generation type player. So the impact he's going to have in the team is going to be immense. I mean, put him in any lineup, he makes them better. He's a great clutch hitter, an on-base machine, like I mentioned. Have the top three hitters in that lineup be, Lindor, Alonso, Lindor, Soto, and potentially Alonso, one of the best top threes in baseball. And just around the city, he's also a very, the person that I've been comparing him a lot to lately because of these whole contract things is A-Rod, and bear with me here for a while. Sure. He's in terms of what he asked for in his contracts, reportedly, I think a lot of people are kind of giving him bad press. That's why I've been comparing it to the whole A-Rod situation. But he's not so much like A-Rod in that he is personable. He is a clean-shaven guy. Doesn't really curse. He's just the perfect role model for a kid that wants to follow a player on a team. So I would expect you're going to see a lot of number 22 jerseys, and there's going to be a lot of new Mets fans coming into that building. I think last I heard that the tickets are pretty hard to find at this point. So you can't, it was a great move by the Mets. They had to sign him. They needed him way more than the Yankees did, I think. So
agreed.
That's been our take on the show for sure.
We've been saying nonstop that, like, as crazy as the numbers have gotten, and when you factor in all the escalators and everything, like we've been saying, that the limit doesn't exist. The number doesn't matter. Like, no matter what, you get this player, and they did it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring in a couple. We have a live chat here, and we've kind of been ignoring it because we're trying to get through as much as we can with you. Let you go here in a minute. I'm gonna bring up a bunch of comments and kind of package that into one question as it relates to Pete. Okay. So Douglas Barnes says, how long do you think it takes to re-sign Pete? Corey saying, don't count on next year with regards to Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think that's a smart, it's a bird in the hand scenario sometimes. You do want to get younger. Vlad is a better all-around player than Alonso, but, can you get him? Will you be able to get him? Will he re-sign? Will he get traded somewhere? I don't think that's likely. And then sign there. I don't think that's likely. But all of these things can happen, and it's hard to earmark and just say, oh, just wait till next year. Plus, the Mets need help now. Yep. I think Juan Soto's a great player, obviously, but I always thought you needed Soto and Pete, or Soto and some combination of another player in the lineup to add to that. So then Andre says, I see 6 years, $162 million for Pete. I think that's a little high, but I would go to 6 years if I had to get it done, because that would put his contract on the same finish line as Brandon Nimmo, which I think makes sense. And then Armand asks, would a 4-year, $112 million deal, which is 28 in AAV, so it's higher AAV, shorter term, get the deal done with Pete? So just kind of your overall thoughts on all of those things, waiting around in free agency for the following year, how long you could see this deal being, when this deal might sign, would a shorter term, higher AAV thing work? Just your opinions, again, because I don't know that there's any real information out there for any of this stuff yet right now with Pete.
I don't think he would sign a 4-year deal just because of age. He's going to end up being in the same situation as someone like Paul Goldschmidt is by the end of a contract of that length, where he's going to be seeking 1-year deals. Nothing is guaranteed. And who knows what kind of player he is when he's 34, 35 years old. Right. I think he might settle for a 5-year contract at that AAV, $28 million. That would make him that would make him on par with what Vlad is expected to get in arbitration. Or did he sign an extension? I remember seeing somewhere that he's expected to get like $28 million this year. So that would put him on par with someone like Vlad Guerrero, who would then blow that out of the water next year. So that's a possibility. I think the most likely scenario is that he does go somewhere for 5 or 6 years. The 6-year point makes a lot of sense, putting that in line with Brandon Nimmo. But I think it's going to be somewhere closer to $25-26 million a year, honestly. And I wanted to make another quick point about Vlad Guerrero too. If the Mets decide to go with a 1-year rental and then target Vlad Guerrero, and this is just pure speculation, just looking at who the players are. Juan Soto's favorite team were the Red Sox. His favorite player was Manny Ramirez. And that combination of Ramirez and David Ortiz, as we know, is probably the greatest, back-to-back pairing in baseball history that I can remember. Just imagine Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. going back-to-back there. 2 Dominican guys, I
see your point.
Just saying. I see it. I see it.
But I do think they should stick with Pete Alonso, and a lot of he had a down year this year. I think that's hurting his market. But Pete is a guy who can hit 50. The guy had 59 home runs in his rookie season. Was it 59? I mean, it was crazy. It was in the high 50s. This guy could hit 50.
I remember what it was.
Yeah. And he's a valuable player. I know that. Maybe Christian Walker is going to cost less money. He's a better defensive first baseman. But just watching Pete all year this year, he seemed like he was doing pretty well at first. He seemed like he had improved there, and he works really hard. And I agree. A bird in hand,
Yeah. And look, if you just do the high water mark on all these numbers, 6 years for $28 million a year is $168 million.
That's too much. Yeah.
It's a lot, but I think I would sign Pete Alonso to that deal, like gun to my head. If you're like, this deal gets it done, anything short of this deal won't get it done. I think if you're the Mets, it's not insane. It is an overpay, but I don't think it's, oh my God, what are they doing? Do you have another couple minutes just for pitching talk or no?
Sure.
Okay.
And I just saw someone named Armand commented 53 home runs, so it wasn't 59. My bad.
Yes, it's all right. It's still a lot. You know what?
Armand
is great because he's
Armand's good stuff.
He's always fact checking. He's like a de facto producer on this show. It's great stuff.
Good.
So let's talk about the pitching market, because there is a guy out there in Corbin Burnes who now seems like maybe he would take a shorter deal, or at least that's potentially being reported, might take a shorter term deal to hit free agency again in a year or two. I think if he does that, he's firmly in the Mets plans. I think this, Steven Strasburg type deal is going to take him out of the Mets plans. David Stearns does not want to operate that way. I think it's smart. You don't get great ROI paying for pitchers, especially when they're over 30 and giving them long-term deals. So I agree with that. And then apart from that, though, you could go out and you could get maybe a Luis Castillo, who's in a very interesting position, because no other team besides the Seattle Mariners, the team that he's on, would be looking to trade a player of that caliber signed to that deal. But he's essentially the fourth best starting pitcher on their team because of how good their young starting pitching is. And he's the highest paid player, I believe, on their team, or the second highest paid player on their team. And they desperately need offense. So, there's a lot of directions that the Mets can go in right now. They can try to get Castillo. They can bring back a Sean Manaea. Maybe Burns' market falls back to them. What do you see being the most likely scenario out of kind of all of this stuff?
It seems like the Mets are, from what I'm hearing, the Mets are willing to go a little bit extra for a player like Sean Manaea. And that's, I mean, as a player and as someone who covered Sean Manaea, there's very few players that were more fun to cover than he was. He's one of the nicest guys in the clubhouse and very humble. And when he made that change in August, when he saw Chris Sale pitch and he decided, let me go a little more horizontal here, he turned into Chris Sale, essentially, one of the best pitchers in the league. So if you can get that version of Manaea, like, go for it. Sign him 3-4 years and stick with the guy. He's a good clubhouse guy. But Corbin Burnes is a super attractive, obviously, like he would be your number one starter immediately. And it really depends on how long the deal is going to be. If he's going to command a 7-8 year deal like Max Fried got, the Mets aren't going to go that way. David Stearns just doesn't believe in that. He's going to go elsewhere. If you can execute a trade for someone like Luis Castillo, that might be a more preferable route. It just depends on who you're going to give up for him. If Seattle wants someone like Brandon Sproat, I don't think the Mets are going to make that kind of deal.
They won't.
If they're willing to take Brett Beatty and someone else a little bit lower in the prospect rankings, possibly. But I don't see a trade happening, if you want me to be honest. I think the likeliest scenario is that the Mets re-sign Sean Manaea. He gets something similar to Luis Severino. Obviously, it'll be a little bit more because the A's had to overpay for Severino in order for him to play in a minor league ballpark. And I don't think it'll be a bad move. We just have to hope that Brandon Sproat turns out to be the real deal. He looks like the real deal. We might see him next season. You never know. And then you're set.
Jump back into the comments really quick just for a couple of other pitchers. I kind of alluded to this already, but do you think it's possible Burnes takes a shorter deal with a higher AAV, or do you think that's just something that's, being speculated about because he doesn't seemingly have a ton of suitors for a long-term deal right now?
I can't see it. I mean, after seeing what Max Fried just signed for, I don't know how. Yeah. I don't know
he wants that
how
Strasburg
he doesn't
contract.
get a deal.
Well, and how is, with respect to Fried, who's been a great pitcher too, but a lot more injury concerns and stuff. Yeah. I don't understand how Fried gets that deal and Burnes doesn't. Burnes has been a more durable, more consistent pitcher than Fried over his career.
100%.
This Yuzi says, give me Bregman over Pete. He's clutch and elite defense, will age better than Pete. So I don't know that I agree with that. I don't think Alex Bregman is a fit for this team, but he is rumored to this team
Do you buy the smoke, Manny? Do you
buy any of that?
There seems to be interest. In all honesty, a Bregman signing would make the Mets a better team defensively, and it would help offensively, but he's not Pete Alonso offensively. I think if you look at their numbers, they compare pretty similarly, but Alonso hits more home runs. So he's going to drive in more runs naturally. Yeah. I think they have similar OPSs. I think they hit it about a similar average, maybe had the same amount of RBIs last year. But remember that the Mets were not very good up until the Jorge Lopez game. After that, they just, it was a catalyst for the rest of the season. But then again, if you sign Bregman, you can move Mark Vientos, who made the plays that he needed to make. He just wasn't an elite third baseman. He did have the highest fielding percentage of all third basemen, minimum 850 innings or so. But his defensive runs saved and outs above average ranked at the bottom 2 of third baseman with the same minimums. So you could move Vientos over to first and put Bregman over at third. That immediately upgrades your team defensively. But I think offensively, your team would take a bit of a hit just because he's not Pete Alonso. He's not going to hit you 40 home runs, driving 100 runs a season. So he's also going to cost more money. So he's going to cost you $1 to $2 million more AAV, and he's going to command probably a 7-year deal. He wants a long-term contract. So I don't think he's fits what the Mets are looking for because of that contract.
Right.
Stearns is big on defense. He loves up the middle defense. Bregman would be over at third base. I still think that the move is Pete Alonso at this point. That's what it's looking like to me.
Yeah, and Bregman has the qualifying offer, which means you got to give up more picks to get him.
Right.
And
that's another
international money. And
to me, it doesn't.
Stearns doesn't want to. He doesn't want to give that stuff.
No,
up.
Listen, you give up every pick you have for Juan Soto. If they were like, you don't get picks for the next 5 years, you're fine. He's 26 years old, whatever. But now when you start more picks and more international bonus money, that's what Stearns likes to do. He likes to maneuver in these markets. I don't want to hamstring him. This is going to be the last one because I know you got to get out of here. Andre saying, any idea if the Mets are in on a Sasaki meeting? Brian Cashman said the Mets are meeting with him, or the Yankees rather, are meeting with him in person. I know that was sort of the next genesis of this interesting Sasaki international free agency. It's more like what Ohtani went through. It's more like even what Yoenis Cespedes went through when he came over from Cuba. This is not like the Yamamoto deal from last year. I think a lot of people need to kind of realize that if they don't already. But any knowledge of whether or not they will get a meeting with Sasaki?
The last we spoke with Stearns, he had submitted a presentation to Sasaki, but had not received an invitation. But this was at the winter meetings. So I would assume that if the Yankees were invited to a meeting with him in Japan, that the Mets must have gotten a meeting as well. I think that was
pre-Soto too. I think when they said that, I think it was pre-Soto.
I believe it was pre-Soto as well. And also I know that Sasaki likes the Mets pitching program. I know that he likes Hefner a lot. The idea
so that was real. Those reports are you can substantiate.
Those are real. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And and just I know what I said before, that the Mets are kind of the new power team in town. They're still they're still not the Yankees in terms of selling tickets and stuff, of packed building every night, all the attention, like all the craziness that's surrounding the Bronx. So I think the Mets would probably be a preferable landing spot for someone like Sasaki. He also would have someone like Kodai Senga, who seems to have a similar personality to him. Kodai Senga is also a quirky personality, for lack of a better term. He's someone who's not at his locker as often. It's kind of hard to track down and talk to sometimes. But pitching is an art for him, and he works on it daily. When you do see him at his locker, he's mimicking pitching motions, and he's just obsessed with it. So it sounds like he would have someone there that could, kind of interact with. But long story short, I have not heard anything about the Mets receiving a meeting. I would assume that if the Yankees got a meeting, the Mets did too. I do know that they submitted a presentation, and at this point, there's only so much money that Sasaki can get. It's not like Shohei Ohtani that you can offer him $700 million and swipe him away. It's going to be all up to Sasaki. And at the winter meetings, his agent, Wolf, mentioned that he would probably prefer a softer landing spot somewhere in the middle to low market team. He also didn't rule out the Yankees or the Mets, which kind of, is crazy to me. But, it sounds like San Diego is going to be where he ends up. If he does choose the Mets, I would say it's probably because of Hefner. It's probably because of their pitching program. It's probably because of Kodai Senga. And but I wouldn't sit around waiting for that news to break anytime soon. Honestly, I honestly don't believe he's going to choose a team in New York if he's really afraid of a big market.
Yeah, I think everything you said is spot on, and it kind of goes along with the stuff that I've been thinking. And just to the point of, if he's going to accept a meeting with the Yankees, and an East Coast team in general, why would he not accept a meeting with the Mets, with Jeremy Hefner, with Kodai Senga? The Yankees don't have the presence of those. I mean, they have a great, pitching infrastructure in their own right, but they don't have a Senga. So I just think it does seem likely that they would probably accept a meeting, if for no other reason than just to accept the meeting and hear them out. Manny, you've given us more time than you said you would. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much,
Before
Manny.
we let you go and we head into the break, is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you just want to hey, this is something we can tell Mets fans, or just a little thought on where you think the Mets might go from here? Again, not with necessarily insider knowledge, but just where you see the free agency and trade market and stuff kind of shaking up over the next month or so.
I guess the one thing I didn't say that I kind of meant to earlier on is just that besides the $765 million that the Mets gave Juan Soto, I don't think that a player of Juan Soto's caliber would go to an organization just for the money. I think something must have been said, something must have been pitched to him in those meetings where they proposed, players that they want to target, moves that they want to make. And I totally expect that the Mets are going to continue to be active participants in this market. I think it's just David Stearns is in control now, and he's a bit more patient. It might take a little bit longer than we like. But I totally expect this team to continue improving. And I think that this team is going to be, they took the Dodgers to Game 6 of the NLCS last year. I think if the Mets go to the World Series, they beat the Yankees too last year, I believe. Yeah. So I think we're in for a fun run here for a few years, and we should all just sit back and enjoy the ride.
I totally agree. Manny, before you go, I just believe in giving people their flowers. So not only do we thank you again for being here, Patty in NYC PB says, thanks, Manny. Good stuff. We've got Subway to Shea. Aunt Rivera says, Manny, you are a gentleman and a scholar. Thanks for your coverage. We echo that sentiment tremendously here on the show. Guys, that is Manny Gomez at Manny Go 3 on Twitter. Of course, covers our New York Mets for NJ Advance, NJ.com, and the Star Ledger. Absolutely thrilled to have you on the show. Would love to have you on again at some point. And again, thank you for giving us more time than you even said you could. It was a great conversation. We're going to head into the break. Ibby and I will take you the rest of the way. This is Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, all courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. We'll be right back.
Peace out.
Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, all courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. Shout out to John Manconi. And of course, shout out to Manny Gomez, who was gracious enough to give us more time than he said he could. And listen, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much.
That happens a lot.
But yes, it does happen a lot. That was gonna be my point, is that usually when people are enjoying themselves, they stick around a bit longer. Yeah. And so, no, Manny was great. He's a great follow on Twitter. He's super honest, as you guys can see, if you've never heard him talk about the Mets, in a forum like this, if you only follow him on Twitter, not blowing smoke. His questions at the press conference for Juan Soto, I thought was a great question.
Fantastic. Yes.
And it was just great having him on the show. Before we get back into the conversation, maybe there's a lot to do. Let's just get a quick word in from our friends over at Independent Safes.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And there's no reason to put anyone, at least at the moment, into a safe. I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm not going to throw anyone and lock away the key, or throw away the key, I should say. So if you need anything, you need to store something away, you got some cash similar to Juan Soto, or just a couple of bucks that you want to put away, or some special belongings that you want to have locked up and kept safe, visit our friends at Independent Safes. They'll take care of you. Tell them Til Mets sent you.
You know, Ibby, shout out to the chat, by the way. We got in some questions, not as many as we usually do, even when we do have a guest, just because, we were trying. Manny said, hey, look, guys, I can do like a radio spot with you guys about 20, 25 minutes. Again, gave us closer to 40. So shout out to him for doing that. We were trying to get through as much stuff as we could. So not ignoring you guys, but we did star some comments I want to get back to now. And as we further the conversation for Ibby and myself, one, I can't stand yous over on Twitter says, yo, I just tuned in. What happened with Alex Reyes? Did they sign him? Peace. And then I guess left. So I can't stand yous. Go back, listen to the first 5 or 6 minutes of the show, which you can do on replay on this same YouTube channel. Til Mets Do Us Part. It lives forever over there. Or subscribe to the audio version of this show, wherever it is you get your podcast, and you will get the answer to your question, because Manny was gracious enough to answer that question for about 4 minutes. He gave a pretty good breakdown of what happened with the Mets and Alex Reyes. Long story short, he's not on the team right now. He is an unrestricted free agent. He also hasn't pitched in a professional game. Oh, I'm still there. Gotcha.
Gotcha.
He hasn't pitched in a professional game since 2021. So it's been a while, and I'm not sure, Ibby, that he would have made any kind of impact. Smart move. I wasn't upset about it when I thought it maybe was real and that story first kind of sort of broke. But yeah, just, wasn't going to move the needle, I don't think. So it is what it is, Andre saying, according to Mark Feinstein, Arenado vetoed a trade to the Astros. And
I saw that, yes.
There is some fallout now, Ibby. Domenico saying, is Houston going to sell now, maybe? Arenado blocked a trade there. If yes, Hader, then you could sign Scott, unstoppable bullpen, Diaz, Hader, Scott, Nunez, Buto, Garrett, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of money in the pen, Ibby. What I would be looking more towards is Framber Valdez now more available?
That's what I'm looking for.
The Astros don't think that they can re-sign Bregman. They couldn't get his replacement in Arenado because he put the nix on it, and they've already traded Kyle Tucker. I think that is a much more, I don't want to say likely, I think that's a much more reasonable scenario than the Mets trading for Josh Hader.
Yeah, I really don't know what the hell the Stros are doing. Like, they're trying to retool on the run, but
it seems like that's what they're doing.
I don't understand getting rid of Kyle Tucker. And I've heard and I've read rumor on people saying that how they handled his leg injury last year, which was a complete joke, mind you, that pissed him off and they didn't think that he was going to stay. So they wanted to get something for him. But even even if that rumor is unsubstantiated and it's not true, just looking at it from a standpoint of, is this team really going to choose to keep Alex Bregman or try to keep Alex Bregman more so than trying to keep Kyle Tucker? Like, Jim Crane, you're being
It would
cheap.
be foolish.
Like, it's extremely foolish. And, in my opinion, Kyle Tucker is one of the top players in the game. He's going to be 28 years old. That's a guy you build your franchise around and you continue to build with. And even though, and I believe that Kyle Tucker can land on the open market upwards of $400 million. And if you think that that's too much money, Jim Crane and the Stros, well, you should be thankful, because you would then be able to keep him because you got Yordan Alvarez for fucking cheap as anything. He settled to stay with you for like 6 years at $80 million. And in my opinion, Yordan Alvarez can be argued as one of the top, if not the top hitters in the sport from an overall average and power perspective. So you've saved money in other places. You could keep this guy, but they dealt him. So understanding the Stros right now, and I have a good friend who is a Stros fan, and he's completely lost as well in terms of what they're doing or trying to accomplish. So all in all, Astros in general, no clue what's going on.
Jump back into the comments here. A couple different things. This is a good one from Carson. It's slightly off topic, but I wanted to get to it, and I don't know that we're going to have another great moment to get to this one. He says, Stearns is too patient for some Mets fans' likings. He's going to let Alonso come to him. First base is not a position of hot pursuit. You go to the top heights. I just think overall that is a true sentiment. I mean, it goes back to what we said before, Ibby. We talked about the likes of Vlad Guerrero Jr., who is not the same level of player that Albert Pujols was or Miguel Cabrera was.
No.
But he is closer to that than, say, a Pete Alonso. He's also going to hit free agency at a younger age than Alonso. Yes. But the thing is that first basemen do not reset the market for other positions unless you are Pujols, Cabrera. You've got to be the undisputed best hitter in baseball to reset the market at first base. So there's not going to be a Juan Soto-esque deal for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
No.
Nor should there be, anything that touches that. Not that anybody is saying this for Pete Alonso. There are upper limits for these players. Now, yes, it's going to cost more to go out and get Vlad Guerrero Jr. because he has been better over the course of his career overall than Pete Alonso, and he's younger, but it's just something that Met fans are going to have to deal with. And I love Pete, and I would like to have Pete back. I would certainly go after Vlad Guerrero Jr. next year. They are not going to trade for Vlad Guerrero Jr. this year. I do not think Toronto is going to trade him anyway. So, it's a matter of, do you want to sit it out? Do you want to wait a little bit? Do you want to go and get, the devil, because the grass ain't always greener sometimes, and you want to get Pete? I know you put a poll up about this. I mean, maybe now's a good time to investigate where that poll is headed.
Absolutely. And I think it's like the whole waiting aspect. And when you just said before about, playing the bridge game, if you went Santana as an example for a bridge to attack Vlad, I think if you do something like that, then based off of where this team is now, what they're coming off of, you would have to do something else in the power department.
Absolutely. And I don't know where you get it.
Right. That's the whole thing, to hold off for that 1 year. But I'm going to go to the poll that I posted. It was a simple one. It simply said, Mets fans, which first baseman would you choose? And I put two players, that being Pete Alonso and Vlad Jr., and I put numbers next to them. Now, mind you, I put numbers that I think are appropriate, but I also understand that when things come to the market, things change drastically. So I put Pete Alonso at 5 years, 135, which I believe is 28 a year. Or 27, 28, whatever the math is on that. And Vlad Guerrero Jr., I put at 8 years, 225. Now, I think that's 28 and a half a year, I think. So I put that number for a reason, mainly because I want to say that that's around the Prince Fielder contract when he got that deal from Detroit so many years back. I put it less than what the likes of Miguel Cabrera got, because I don't think Vlad is Miguel Cabrera. And I don't think he's Pujols either, like you just said before. But I am curious when it comes to the market at first base and how the league is treating first base, what they're going to do with Vlad Jr. What is the number really going to be? Because to me, with how things have been going, if he gets offered 8 years, 225, that seems like the highest offer because nobody treats first baseman the way that they used to. But because of his age at 26, is that going to change things? And is he going to be able to push $300 million over X amount of years?
I could see him getting 240. I could see him getting 240, which is 30 in AAV over 8 years. I could see that.
So if that happens, like that in itself, that resets the first base market a lot, because even though he signed as an outfielder, that's making more than what Bryce Harper's making, even though he's a first baseman now. And that crushes the likes of even previous players of what Joey Votto's contract was, what Matt Olson's contract is, what Freddie Freeman's contract is. And I know that age plays a factor here, but I'm curious about it. And based off of the voting, we have 133 votes in so far and counting. 59% side with the Vlad contract that I offered over Pete. 59% for Vlad, 41% for Pete. 8 years, 225 for Vlad, 5 years, 135 for Pete. Vlad is starting to pull away with 130 plus votes in so far.
Maybe a lot of people in the comments are saying, Armand says Vlad is going to get 30 million in AAV. Brad saying he's going to get 30, maybe 33 in AAV. Look,
it's definitely possible.
It's possible. I see where you're coming from with the barometer of the contract.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that Bryce Harper, playing first base now, didn't sign that deal as a first baseman, signed it as an outfielder. That maybe changes the math. But also, while it wasn't that long ago, still kind of long ago when you look at where free agency is going and how the dollars are trending up, up, up. Look, I love Pete. I do.
Of course.
If that contract for Vlad, even if it's a little more than that, even if it's 30 in AAV, so it's 8 years, 240, I'd probably do that deal for Vlad over the deal for Pete, just because Vlad is younger. Vlad is a better player overall for his career to this point. Alonso has the bigger home run numbers. I want Alonso. I would just sign Alonso right now. I would give him a 6-year deal to line him up with Brandon Nimmo, like I brought up with Manny Gomez in the first half. I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't care what the dollar value winds up being, 140, 160, 150, who cares? And I would just do that. Carson saying, I'm sticking with my 6 for 140 contract for Alonso. That's his prediction, given the age and where he falls among the position. To me, that's great. I would do that, and I'd be done with it. The tricky part becomes, Ibby, if for some reason the Mets either don't want to go where Alonso is trying to take them, or they just decide that they want to wait out Vlad Guerrero Jr. I don't know which is likely, but to your point, Carson said this before, jock. And I think it doesn't make up for the loss of Pete. Yeah. But I think if you are the Mets and you don't bring Pete Alonso back and you decide to make this first baseman conversation a next year issue, you do probably need to go get Carlos Santana and then a guy who can be your regular DH who has pop. And I think Jock Peterson kind of fits that bill. So I think this is kind of what we're looking at. You're signing 2 players to a 1-year deal to a lesser deal, but you can't sign Carlos Santana and Jesse Winker to replace Pete. You're going to need more pop, I think, than those 2 players offer. And, I know Jock is a bit older, but, this, to me, that's kind of the route the Mets need to go. You're going to have to up the power potential.
And I'm just looking at some of the comments right now, and I know there's other facets to the games of both players, and I think this is Chaz and David Elkins. I think you're a first timer. So just saying, welcome to the show, obviously.
Welcome, Chazin.
Yeah. And it's saying how you're not taking into account how good Alonso is at picking balls at first. Guerrero stinks as a first baseman. Please, I'll take Pete any day of the week. Look, I understand that there are ups and downs with both players, but again, age is going to play a big factor here. And the one thing I was alluding to before we even jumped on today, when people were talking about Pete and Vlad in the comments before we went live, I said I had some thoughts on this. And my main thought was, when it comes to Stearns and when it comes to this team in general, I think it's a combination of big game hunting, going after certain types of players, going after certain aged players. And I really think that while it is risky to wait out things, and if the market comes down to a point where Pete is more accepting of the number that the Mets want to go to, then Pete will stay. But I really think the idea, and it's not just piggybacking off of what Manny said, even though what he said is proper when he talks about the idea of 2 Dominican players and the idea of a new age Manny and David Ortiz type of situation with Soto and Vlad. It's not even so much that, even though it's a great visual, but seeing and knowing that you can lock in players at such a young age, I feel like that could be the way that David Stearns tries to put across to Steve Cohen why I'm going to spend so much of your money. I'm going to get the best ROI because I'm getting younger players, and we're going to maximize the years that we have them. So yeah, we're going to pay a little bit more on the back end when they get a little bit older, but I'm going to make sure that I'm getting these guys when their stats are trending up as opposed to trending down. So that's why I think the idea of Vlad makes a lot of sense, and I could see them going that route, but it really is dependent on how this market comes crashing down on Pete, which I've been saying it's going to, and I think it's going to get to a point where the Mets could ultimately say, look, we will do this, we will lock you in now, but and this is one more thing when it comes to Pete, I really feel that the Mets want him locked in, and then that's it. I do not think, because I had been thinking in my mind, like the idea of him falling down so bad in this market, being out there in January and settling for a Cody Bellinger type contract, 3 years, 90 mil opt-outs. I do not think the Mets want to play the opt-out game here with Pete. I think this offseason is enough of a headache for them. And I think they're going to say, we want you locked in for X amount of years, no opt-outs. And if they push for the opt-outs, I think that's when the Mets would say, we're walking away, thanks, but no thanks. Like, this is what we're offering. We want you to be here. We're not doing this whole dance again next year.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple comments coming in, and I know we have some new commenters, which means we have some new viewers, maybe some new subscribers. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Til Mets Do Us Part. We're live every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Of course, by the way, next week, Wednesday, Christmas Day. The week after that, Wednesday, New Year's Day, we will be live at some point over the next 2 weeks. Ibby and I are working on a schedule that makes the most sense for the both of us and for all of you to tune in, because look, things will slow down a little bit in baseball free agency and trades and stuff, because everybody will celebrate the holidays as things kind of tend to do at the end of the year every year with the baseball offseason. But we still want to do the show and we still want to do what we love. So we're definitely not going to take 2 weeks off just because, 2 big holidays fall on Wednesdays. We'll let you guys know the best way to never miss a show is to subscribe on YouTube so that you'll get the notifications. Subscribe, turn the notifications on. You can also follow us on Twitter at Til Mets Do Us Part. Follow us on Blue Sky at tilmetsdouspart.bluesky.app, or follow us on Instagram at Til Mets Do Us Part. It's a great way to make sure that you never, ever, ever miss an opportunity
also,
to know
the
when we're doing our
notifications.
thing.
Yeah, turning on the notifications. I was just checking some of our stats before, and shout out to the 13 brand new subs that joined during this live. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, make sure you keep subbing. We at one point we did hit 195 people, 196 people on the YouTube side, which is a brand new high for us over there. 631 of you are with us right now. We got over 140 on the YouTube side. Again, make sure you vote on the poll. Make sure you like the video. We only got 40 something likes so far. We want to break at least 50. Thank you so much for that. But we've gained we're up 125% in terms of people turning on notifications. So they are always going to know when we are on. So it's fantastic, which is why our numbers, I think, are starting up at such a high point as opposed to starting at 5 or 10. We're hitting a much higher point of people to start the show in the 50, 60 area and continues to climb. So thank you so much for turning on those notifications. It helps us in the algorithm as well. So thank you.
Ibby, can I put you on the spot? Is that fair?
Sure. Why not? You always do.
Well, listen, we had a giveaway going. We said that when we hit 1,000 subscribers, which we did last week,
we did.
We were going to, during the show, I believe we hit the 1,000.
Yes.
We were going to give away an Edwin Diaz autographed baseball to one lucky subscriber.
We would.
We hit that number. We usually also after we hit that number, we'll let it go for another, 5 hours, 10 hours anyway. Right. Just to make sure nobody drops out and all that stuff. We want to make sure that number that threshold is a little bit exceeded.
Yes.
So people don't subscribe and try to dip out or something crazy.
Right.
So we said that we might announce a winner today. I don't know if you had a chance to do it. You're a busy guy. You got 2 kids at home. It's the holiday season.
Yeah.
Toyota-thon. Happy holidays.
Yes. All those things.
All of those things going on.
Yes.
I don't know if you had a chance to do it. I'm just asking if you did have a chance to do it.
I did not have a chance to do it yet. I'm figuring some things out on the YouTube side to make sure that I get all the proper names in. So I did not get a chance to do it yet. I just want to I love being transparent with everyone and putting everything out there. It's not the easiest of things on the YouTube side because not everyone's account is public. So I can only see the public accounts when it comes to stuff like that. So that's what's making it very difficult right now, but I'm trying to work through that. I have a couple of ideas and I'll throw it to the chat what they think. I may do something where I put it back to the Twitter side and just show me that you're a sub on there, and then I can take from those retweets or from those comments, and it's a lot easier for me to throw it into a generator. I can do something like that, or I could do something where the next time we go live, prior to that, I put out a word saying that everyone that shows up in that given live, those names that show up, and then they type in entered, I can then take those names and then put them into a generator, and we can do it live during the show.
Oh, that might be fun.
That's another way we can go about it too. So there's 2 ways that I've been thinking about trying to make it work.
Mr. Nobody.
God damn, Mr. Nobody.
Mr. Nobody coming in saying Ibby was doing it, but then his Wi-Fi went out. Shay saying Ibby picked my name 5 times in a row. He's trying to fix the algorithm to not give it to me. No, it is true. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this if you're watching us live. The best way to do a giveaway like this, and in the way that not only we have always done it, but a lot of podcasts, live streams, whatever, do this is with a randomizer. And if you do it based on Twitter followers, well, everybody who follows you on Twitter is super easy because you could just pull up that list, you throw them all into a generator, boom, 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 it's done. It spits it out. You pick a name. It picks a name at random. But to your point, where stuff is not all public all the time, you can't necessarily get every single person's info, or at least their name or their way to reach out to them. So it is a little tricky. This is a good one, Ibby. Brad saying he's not on Twitter, so he doesn't want to go that route.
Okay.
I
did saying,
Screw the private accounts. Just take them out of the mix.
We got this one here saying that the doing it during the live and so people actually have to type a word, because the way I have things set up, in order to type a word, you got to sub the channel. So that could drive things as well for people to come over to the YouTube side and join us on our journey. So I'm kind of leaning that way to doing it. Obviously, it wouldn't get out to people during the actual holiday itself, which I am a little bit bummed about. But I think that might be the route that I choose to go. There are a lot of things I can do. I can do it as a quick randomizer. I can put it on a wheel. I've done duck races before where everyone gets a duck and I can put it on the screen and they watch everyone race across to see which one reaches the finish line. There's a lot of ways that we can go about doing and have some fun with it. But no, I haven't forgotten. I still plan on giving this away so I can get off of my desk. It's okay. I will give it away.
Domenico's asking what the giveaway is. You want to show it one more time?
Sure, right there. Here.
It's an autographed Edwin Diaz baseball that Ibby is holding, and in his other hand, that's the certificate of authenticity, so you know that it's real because we keep it real on this show. Ibby,
Always.
the consensus seems to be, and we'll work this out in the next week or so.
Yeah.
The consensus seems to be keep Twitter out of it. Brad also saying no Twitter for me. I think not to make this a different kind of conversation. You know, I have my issues with Twitter and the person who runs it, but I think there has been a little bit of an exodus from Twitter. And I think it's sort of, even though some of our views come from Twitter, I think it's a little, I don't want to do it where it's based on that if we do it based on subscribers. So I do think doing something like Douglas Barnes says, do it live, you know, using the subscriber base, because you have to subscribe in order to be able to drop a comment. I think that's the way we're gonna need to do this. So anyway, moving on from that, we will sort that out in the next week or so. We promise somebody's gonna win it. We are always going to reward your viewership, your subscribership. I think that's a word, whatever. We're always going to do that. If we say we're going to give something away, we're giving it away. I have another giveaway coming up, by the way, that we're going to do after this one is wrapped up. I think people will like it. So anyway, listen, we do a lot. We work hard, but you guys tune in all the time, and we want to make sure that we reward you for listening to the show. This is a good one from GSD on the aforementioned Twitter. Will the drones scare off free agency? It's possible.
You got drones over in California? You got nothing?
No, we have police helicopters that hover constantly.
Okay.
That's
fair enough.
So we don't, there's no room for drones because this is police helicopters constantly. Well, you know, it's funny because you don't realize it living in New York. Maybe it's a little different in New Jersey, but living in New York, obviously there are police helicopters, but because the buildings are so large, and especially in Manhattan, everything is in such a small blueprint with tall buildings, you can't get a lot of helicopter traffic. But here, buildings are not as big, and the expanse of the county lines and stuff are so much bigger. LA County is massive. Then you've got Orange County, you've got Burbank County, Ventura County, all these adjacent counties right here in Southern California, that there's just a tremendous amount of police helicopter activity kind of all the time. But anyway, back into the New York Mets conversation. Mr. Nobody, every day that goes by without signing Pete makes me nervous. Nimmo and Lindor aren't spring chickens. It's risky. Chazin, also remember one thing. Pete is 40-112. That's home runs and RBIs. Even one substitute doesn't come near that power production, I think is what he's getting at. Okay. All of that is true. Also following up by saying the correct move is to sign Pete. I want to see some of the young kids come up, whether it's Beatty, I don't like Beatty, or Mauricio. I want to Acuna playing second every day. I want to see the youth. I had to decipher that. But no,
good job.
Good points, Ibby. This is what I was going to get at really quickly with the Alonso versus Vlad part of the conversation. It's twofold. You know I love Alonso. Alonso might be my favorite Met right now. It's between him and Lindor. It kind of has been for a while, basically since Lindor got here. So look, I think that the window is a factor in this. I talked last week and the week before that when we talked about Soto. The Mets are looking to extend their window.
Yes.
And so the Mets right now are firmly in a window to win with Lindor and Senga and Diaz and Nimmo and Soto all in the primes of their career. But Soto is in the young prime of his career. The Mets are trying to transition that prime or that window for as long as possible. So right now, Soto fits in nicely with this group of stars who is around the 30-year-old mark. But because he's 4 years or more younger than them, there's an opportunity to extend that window. If you sign Pete long-term, you kind of add him to the mix right now. If you go after Vlad next year, you're pairing him with Soto to potentially extend that window beyond the current one that's here. It kind of gives you a clearer picture. Then you could say, hey, our window for the next 10 years is Soto, Vlad Jr., Mark Vientos, hopefully, Francisco Alvarez, hopefully. Let's say one of the other prospects pans out. I don't care who it is. It's Acuna, it's Jet Williams, it's Drew Gilbert, it's Mauricio. Pick one. That's a great core to build off of. And some of those guys are not going to be expensive, obviously, because they're going to be people that came up through your own system for a bit. So that is something to keep in mind. The other thing that I want to stress is that we talked all offseason before it happened. Where do the Mets go if they don't sign Juan Soto? There's not a great opportunity. Even Manny Gomez in the first half of the show said he thought the Mets needed Soto more than the Yankees did. Maybe I like the moves the Yankees have made since not getting Soto. The Bellinger pivot was smart. I don't like the Fried money, but pivoting to Fried makes sense to build as good a rotation as you can. Going out and getting Devin Williams hurt my soul because I wanted the Mets to trade for Devin Williams. I like those moves that they made to pivot away from Soto. But the Mets didn't have a great opportunity to pivot away from Juan Soto. The Mets have a great opportunity if for some reason they either decide not to sign Pete or Pete signs elsewhere, to be able to pivot potentially from Pete Alonso this year to potentially 8 years of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year. That's a good position to be in. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that's two things you just have to keep in mind. And I cannot stress this enough, especially for the new subscribers or new-ish like Domenico and Chazin and CJ and some of the new names I'm seeing. I love Pete. If the Mets sign Pete right now, I would be ecstatic. But I do think the Mets have two smart pivot points that they can go to with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if Alonso is not retained. And they didn't even have that luxury with Juan Soto, no matter how big of a pipe dream he may have been to start the offseason.
Yeah, this is why I come back to what I was saying before about, and to continue your point about windows and things like that. That's why I said to Man, I really believe that there is this hard stance when it comes to Pete, because I do think that they realize the opportunities that they have in front of them in terms of creating a much larger window instead of trying to pigeonhole themselves into saying we have to win within a 3-year period. Granted, we want our team to win, but again, when you're building for sustainability, it's not so much about building to win with only a small window. Juan Soto opens up a 10-plus year window because of the prime that you're expected to have of him, but he can't do it by himself. And yes, Lindor's in his 30s, Nimmo's in his 30s, Alonso would be in his 30s. So it's like you're saying, how much more of this given prime of a player do I have? I'm not giving myself the best opportunity to maximize the returns of a Juan Soto. That's why I really think that the Vlad idea, the more and more I think about it, and I saw someone in the comments before, and I agree with them.
It makes sense the more you think about it.
The more I think about it, it makes sense. But I'm sorry, I can't remember the person who commented this. So if you're still here and you hear me say this, please say that it was you. They were saying how you can't have a guy who's making 765 and 342, and if Vlad gets somewhere upwards of 300 minutes, like you can't do that. It's not a way to build. And I understand that point. But like I was saying before, this is why someone like David Stearns with a big budget and a high priced roster makes sense, because he's a guy that knows how to fill in the margins. So when you're spending big, this is why you see David Stearns doing as much as he does when it comes to smaller end things, because as much as everyone talks about the Dodger model, people don't realize that exactly what David Stearns is doing is part of said Dodger model, because I said it last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. the Dodgers had to find and rehabilitate Max Muncy. The Dodgers find players and fix them and make them better within their
Bingo.
That is what you have to do, because you want to be able to spend like the Dodgers do, like they have when they get Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow. And like everyone's like, they just keep getting all these guys. Well, it's because you supplement in the other areas that are cheap. And that's what is possible here, because as much as we love Pete, and I think I said this on the show. If I didn't, I said it to myself in the car, whenever it was. I said
it's almost the same thing.
I said that for as much as we love Pete, and Manny brought up, like, this is the guy that hit 53 home runs in his rookie year. It's like, I get that. And you're looking back and you're saying, well, how old is Pete during his rookie year versus how old is Pete now? You have a chance to reset the clock almost and take on a 26-year-old at first base that allows you to then move into the next phase, and you can get those prime 5 years. Maybe you have to give 8 years, but you might get 5 prime years of big time numbers. I'm not trying to put down Pete. I'm not saying I don't want Pete back, because I've been saying I would love to have Pete back, but I really believe that there's a hard line stance on what he's offered, because the Mets realize that they have better opportunities to lengthen that window instead of locking in Pete for 6 or 7 years.
I tend to agree with you across the board. And I know this is tangential to the conversation that we're having right now, but that's also why, to me, among other things, Alex Bregman makes no sense. If you're going to lock up Pete because Pete's your guy, Pete did it in New York. Like a lot of the commenters have said, he's basically a wake up and hit 40 home runs and drive in 100 plus RBI automatically type bat. Other people have said he plays 160 games a year or more. He played in all 175 of the Mets games, including the postseason, of course, this past season. If you're going to do all of that with a guy like Alonso, who's been here, who might hit 500 or 600 home runs as a Met and put himself as an all-time Met, fine. Then maybe you sacrifice that little bit of extra time with a guy like Vlad Guerrero Jr. But I am not, Ibby, pivoting from Pete Alonso to sign Alex Bregman, who has not been an elite offensive player since 2019, who will not have the benefit of the Crawford boxes, that short porch in left field, to a massive deal that's going to probably block me from signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. To me, that is only compounding your mistake. If you want to make a good baseball move with Pete, that's also a good vibes move, I will sign for it right the hell now. But if your pivot point is going to be Alex Bregman, I will be, honestly, I'll be upset. I trust David Stearns. I saw CJ say it in the comments before. We always preach hashtag in Stearns we trust.
Trust in Stearns, yeah.
For sure. But to me, that would be a bad pivot when you got a guy like Vladimir Guerrero sitting out there potentially next year. So, Ibby, couple of other great comments here. And I don't even know where to go next because there's so much good stuff. By the way, Andre checked in and said that was him who brought up the point earlier.
Thank you, Andre. I appreciate that. Sorry, yeah, thank you.
Ibby, look, a couple things here on the trade market. Let's put the Pete stuff to rest for a while.
Yeah.
A couple things on the trade market. Carlos Ortiz says, would you want a 1-year rental with regards to a starting pitcher? Brad following it up by saying Framber Valdez wouldn't work. He's only under control for 1 year. He'll be 30, so there's not going to be an extension. Ibby, I don't see these things being likely. It's just more of an acknowledgement that the Mets are still looking for another top flight arm in the starting rotation. Andre said, I don't see the Astros selling because that division is still weak. And Carson saying part of Arenado's decision to turn down the trade to Houston is he didn't want to make a decision early in the offseason. It's unclear whether the Astros will continue to heavily pursue Arenado or pivot to other options because he's trying to figure out whether or not they will sell. So I don't think the Mets are going to trade big for a 1-year rental unless maybe that player was a guy like Garrett Crochet who they'd have to sign to an extension because, again, 25 years old, right, not 30. So, look, I'd be interested in Framber Valdez, but I don't think a player like that is going to happen.
I mean, I would love Framber, and I think, I think that the 1-year options rental, be it via trade or just signing someone as a 1 year with who might have opt-outs like the Walker Buehlers of the world. I know Carson's going to love that one. I think it is likely for this team because I really feel that David Stearns has, I don't want to say he has a problem with commitment, but I think he's being very
probably does
careful.
for starting pitchers, and he probably should.
He should. It's because again, the return on investment, the high likelihood of injury, like it's a very risky proposition when it comes to pitchers, which is why anyone beyond 3 years is probably out the door. But I put the three guys on the thumbnail this week of Sean Manaea, of Luis Castillo, and Walker Buehler for a reason. It's because I think that those three names are ones that he would be in on from the years perspective, even though Manaea is probably a year longer than he wants. I think he wants him for 3. He probably pushes for 4. Castillo has 4 years left on that contract. And I think Walker Buehler is someone with whatever contract he signs is going to have a 1-year opt-out because he's trying to pitch up to try to do what Blake Snell did. So I think that those guys make the most sense for this team. Now, the question is, which one can they get? I saw someone in the comments before mention, I think it might have been Jeff Cohen, shout out to you, Jeff, saying, like, what's it going to take to get Luis Castillo? I question, depending on who is involved, if the Mets can actually, again, be a potential, or I should say legit player, because I think they are potential players, but legit, similar to what I said prior about the Red Sox being the team for Garrett Crochet. If the Red Sox want him, the Red Sox are going to get him. Same thing here. If the Red Sox want Luis Castillo, the Red Sox are going to get Luis Castillo. If the Baltimore Orioles want Luis Castillo, the Baltimore Orioles are going to get Luis Castillo. If those teams do not, because they don't want to take on the money, because sometimes those teams can be cheap, and I don't think the Cubs are as much as in as others say. I don't think they want to spend the money, because I think that if they're going to spend money, they're going to try to use that on an extension for Tucker. So I don't count the Cubs either. So by process of elimination, the Mets could be in. But I think it was Andre in the comments just before saying how the as much as people want to say, and I've said it on this show before too, that the Mariners want to dump the contract and move it around. He perfectly worded. They want to make a baseball trade. It has to make sense for them. They want offense. I don't think the Mets can offer ready-made offense or even prospect ready-made offense that's going to help the Seattle Mariners a better team in 2025 or 2026. I don't think the Mets have that. So the thing would be, would Seattle do a deal that's prospect driven, dump the cash, and then use that cash to go get a Christian Walker? Is that even the right move for them? Does it make sense for them? Like, that's where it gets difficult, because I love Luis Castillo. I've been talking on the show for the longest time how much I want him on this team and how much he makes sense, but I don't know if they have the actual capital that Seattle would want, even if those other teams bow out. They might just say, we'll hold them and we'll talk to more teams when the deadline rolls around instead. That's where it gets difficult for a guy like Castillo, which is why I'm more in line with what Manny said in the first half, saying that Sean Manaea makes sense. I will be very interested if David Stearns bites the bullet on this pitcher for 4 years. I think it's something to really watch, which is why I think it can go either way with him. And then I really think, I know Carson's not going to like it, but I really think that Walker Buehler is the guy that David Stearns wants and the guy he's going to go after, probably offers him 2 years and offers him that opt-out. Maybe he can make a little bit more on a 2-year deal in comparison to what he got on the qualifier. So something along the lines of like 2 years, let's call it $42 million, $44 million for 2 years, something like that, but an opt-out after year 1. Because by the time he opts out where the qualifiers are going, that's probably what the qualifying offer would be. He might then leave and then try to up it, like I said, like similar to Snell, and get something more long-term. That's what I really ultimately think the Mets want to do. I think Walker Buehler's the guy, but I think Manaea is right there if Stearns is willing to bite the bullet on the extra year.
It's funny because you spent a lot of time talking about Castillo, and rightfully so. He's a great fit for this team as far as the roster building is concerned. And you mentioned Andre's comment about them wanting to make a baseball trade, Seattle, that is. Other people like Hab Abreu and some other folks calling it a more of a salary dump. I think it's both, Ibby, and I'm not trying to hedge here and like shout out, like everybody's got, these great thoughts, although a lot of our commenters do have great thoughts throughout the show. It's both it's a salary move, not a salary dump for a baseball trade. So I think they're both kind of right. And I think that's what makes the Mets, that's the only thing that makes the Mets attractive, as it were, from a standpoint of some of these other teams. You mentioned, hey, if Baltimore wants Castillo, they've got better prospects. They could take on his money if they decide to. They're going to be able to get him. If Boston wants to take on Castillo's money, they can take on Castillo's money. They have better prospects if they want to get him. I mentioned this a little bit in the first half with Manny Gomez, and it's true. No other team that had Luis Castillo at this money that they have him on would be looking to trade him, because he is a bargain by the standards of today's pitching market. The only team that would want to trade him is the team that he's on, the Seattle Mariners, because their young pitching is so good that Castillo is basically their fourth starter. He is also wildly, or by far, I should say, one of their most expensive players. So to look at the fact that they need so much help on offense, they're trying to compete, they need help on the infield, they have this high-priced asset that they don't necessarily need. So if you could give them back players on the infield, or, to Andre's point, some prospect that they can flip for a better hitter, which is complicated, and give them salary relief, you're giving them a lot of opportunities to make themselves the best version of the Seattle Mariners that they can be. And I think that's when the Mets become attractive. Now, Andre, you're right. They have no interest in McNeil. However, I think this is the exact kind of deal that McNeil can be thrown into that would get him off of the Mets roster, because of how weak the infield is for the Seattle Mariners. In other words,
Seattle has nothing at second or third.
Nothing at second, nothing at third. So, look, do they want McNeil? No. Is McNeil a centerpiece for this trade the way he could have been for the Edwin Diaz deal? No. But, and Ryan Finkelstein said this great on our show last week when I had him on to wrap up the winter meetings. If you could kick in $10 million on Jeff McNeil, that turns him into like a $5.5 million player. You give him to Seattle along with some legit prospects. Let's say it's, I don't know, whoever they want. It's Acuna and Mauricio and Jeff McNeil, and you kick in $10 million. Then you've decided that for the next couple of years, Luis Castillo is a $34 million pitcher, which I think in today's market he is. You've gotten Jeff McNeil off of your roster, which opens up spots for your younger players. Now, sure, you've traded some of those younger players, but you still have some other ones who play up the middle, and you are allowed to reshape your team a little bit while also getting an ace caliber pitcher who has 3 more guaranteed years on his deal with a easily vesting 4th-year option. Ibby, that is so much more attractive than going for Burnes on 8 years or some of this other stuff. So I don't think it's easy, to use Andre's exact word. I do think it's a complicated situation. Corey thinks that's not enough to get it done. But I do think that I think there's math here that makes this work. I do. I think there's a way, there's a path.
There's math that can make it work, but I agree with the people in the comments that are saying that it's gonna take more than people realize. And I know Mets fans a lot of times, try to sell things short to other franchises as if they're all dumb. And it's just like, oh, just take these bottom, like, I don't want these guys, so just take them and say I'm going to keep all my good guys. And it's like, I'm not denying that Jeff McNeil could be a part of this from a math perspective, but I think like I said before, this comes down to the Mariners wanting things in return, whether it was to complicate things on another level, because we all know that Poto likes to make deals. If it's to acquire players that he can add to his own to then trade for something, or taking on the top end prospects that he thinks he deserves to then reallocate that money to spend on, let's say, a Christian Walker type. Either way, the Mets are going to have to pay up here. Like, it's not going to be, I see some people like McNeil and Beatty. That's nowhere near enough. Like, if you want them to be a part of it, potentially, if that's what the Mariners as a team want to say, we think we can rehab and take on, Brett Beatty as a hitter. If that's what they want, then maybe that's a part of it. But you're really looking at other names. They need help up the middle. You're looking at Acuna. You're looking at Jet Williams. You're looking at Mauricio. You're looking at center field as well. You could be looking at Drew Gilbert. Like, I wouldn't even put it out of the realm if they said we want Carson Bench. Like, there are guys that they're going to ask for because they need position players that some people might not be, as fans, might not be comfortable giving up. And I don't even know if David Stearns is going to be comfortable giving them up. But if you want a pitcher like this, because I say this ad nauseum, guys, all the time. I've been saying it for the last 2 years now. Guys that provide innings get paid. Guys that provide innings bring back prospects for a reason, because we cannot find innings in baseball anymore. This guy averages 170 plus innings a year, 170 plus strikeouts a year. The guy's a bulldog out there. He's a guy that takes the ball, can protect the bullpen. If you just burned out your pen on a Monday, he's going out there on Tuesday, he's throwing 7 innings. You don't have that anymore. You got to pay for it. And the Mariners know that. The Mariners know the market. They're going to ask for the moon. And to be honest, they deserve to.
Let's get a perspective that we don't normally get, because this show is called Til Mets Do Us Part. It is a Mets show. This is from a new subscriber, DXTSU. As a Mariners fan, I don't think we would accept that. Follows it up by saying, Mariners need talent now, which is exactly what we're talking about, which is why that's the thing that I think, despite his diminished ability, makes Jeff McNeil attractive-ish if you pay down his deal, is simply because who knows what Acuna is? Who knows what Mauricio is? I've always loved Mauricio's upside. Who knows what Brett Beatty is? Like, okay, just to keep it real, Ibby, I don't like Brett Beatty. I don't think he's a good player. I don't think he'll ever be a good player. You and other people disagree with me. I've always liked Mauricio's upside. I'm not sure what he will wind up being. I'm intrigued by Acuna simply because of the pedigree, and he might just be a bright lights guy who was able to turn it on once he got to the big league because he was bored in AAA. Look, we all know who his brother is. He's never going to be his brother, but he doesn't have to be his brother. He could be a very, very good major leaguer, but we don't know. We know the type of stuff that McNeil could potentially offer. And before we put this conversation to bed, I just want to be completely accurate on the math. Okay. Mm-hmm. Luis Castillo has 3 years, $24 million left guaranteed on his deal. He has a vesting option when he's 35 years old that he will probably get to. That's $25 million. So essentially, that entire contract is, let's just say, $100 million for 4 years. Jeff McNeil has 2 years left at $15.7 million. If you tacked on $10 million on each year of McNeil's deal, that makes McNeil a $5.7 million player, which would be very attractive even at his diminished state because of his versatility, his bat on ball skills, and a lot of need that Seattle has for 2 years. Plus, you're taking the Castillo deal off their hands, and you're making Castillo a $34 million starting pitcher for the next 2 years, but I think he is worth that. After that, his contract would drop down to $24 million and then $25 million when he's still only 35 years old. Now, McNeil does have a club option for a third year after those two, but there's a $2 million buyout. So you know what? If you're Steve Cohen, just flex the muscle and pay the buyout, whatever. So thank you for chiming in, DXTSU, if you're still here.
He is. I was just asking.
Would you take McNeil and $10 million annually? That makes him a $5.7 million player. And one of Mauricio or Acuna, take your pick, and Brett Beatty. To me, Ibby, I make that deal right now while we wait for DXTSU, who is a Mariners fan, to answer. People in the comments, would you give up McNeil and $20 million, Beatty, and one of Mauricio and Acuna for Luis Castillo? We want to know in the comments. DXTSU says he likes that, or he or she likes that. Shouldn't assume gender. Apologize.
Right.
Maybe would you do that deal?
I mean, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would, but my question that I wanted to say to DX, because this is why I asked if he was still here. I know that there are prospects in the pipeline for the Mariners. I know Colt Emerson is due up soon, and I would assume that he's the guy that can take shortstop away from J.P. Crawford. There's no answer at second base for the Mariners. I'm not sure if you're aware, DX, and if you are, you can fill us in. Is Cole Young? I know Cole Young is the second baseman in the pipeline for the Mariners. Is he close enough? Because if when John's talking about someone like McNeil being a throw-in for 2 years, does that buy time for Cole Young to properly develop, and then you can work McNeil out as Cole Young is coming in, as opposed to putting all the pressure on him to be an answer? I just think that that is something that fans have to look deeper into when talking about deals like this, because while the Mariners are looking for certain types of players, you got to make sure that they don't already have guys that are right there or going to be there shortly to to fill in. So that's why I'm curious on DX, your thoughts, because I know Emerson's close as a shortstop, but I'm not sure how close Young is. And I know he's the guy they have penciled in for second base potentially. But I would do that deal in a heartbeat.
Jump back into the comments. A lot of people agreeing. Shay saying they would do that deal. Brad saying they would do that deal. Him over on Twitter saying yes all day. Charlie saying he would make that deal. A lot of people are kind of agreeing from a Mets perspective, but you're right. It's not one-sided. It takes two to tango. Andre saying the Mets do that in a heartbeat. Seattle won't. And you might be right, Andre. You might be right.
I don't think they would.
Just rough math. Yeah. The deal that I proposed gives them two prospects, one a little bit more legit than the other. Let's say it's Acuna, because maybe people are scared off by Mauricio's injury history now and what he'll be after the double knee surgery. You get Acuna, whose value is now higher than it was, let's say, a year ago. You get Beatty, whose value is lower than it was a year ago, but a lot of people around baseball still think he can be a hitter. He's a legit prospect to some people. And you're getting McNeil at about $11 million for 2 years. You're also saving, if you're Seattle. And remember, you have three great starting pitchers, so you're not losing Castillo and hurting your team tremendously. You have three great starting pitchers. Your problem is offense, and you are netting $88 million over the next 4 years. You can do a lot if you're Seattle with $88 million over the next 4 years. To me, that's what makes this attractive. It's the kicking in of the money and taking Castillo's money entirely off their hands and giving the money towards McNeil's deal. Say what you want about Acuna, Beatty, Mauricio, even McNeil. Ibby, $88 million allows them to go out and sign whomever they want to fix their offense.
Bringing in Chasm's comment real quick, saying I'm not giving up Mauricio or Acuna. Manaea proved that he can pitch in New York, and we don't have to give up anything. It's just money. I understand that, and I've talked on the differences between Manaea and Castillo before. In case you weren't aware of my thoughts on that, it was along the lines of I know who Luis Castillo is and has been his entire career. Whereas, yes, I love Manaea. I would love to have him back. I would love both guys to be here. In the perfect world, but I don't know if David Stearns wants to go 4 years off of a 1 year getting the 90th percentile of a 32 going on 33-year-old pitcher and banking on this is what he's going to be for the next 4 years. That's where I kind of have this back and forth and saying, I don't know if he'll do it, but I know that, Luis Castillo, on the other hand, yes, you have to pay up for it, but 4 years of Castillo, I trust more than 4 years of Manaea, even though I would have to still give up prospects for. And the prospects, honestly, and Andre, if you're in the comments still, if you would agree with me on this one or not, I think if the Mets really wanted him and they wanted to get out in front to get him, they would have. And even if you throw in the whole math thing with McNeil and money, you'd still have to give up, in my opinion, you probably have to give up one of Benj or Gilbert and one of Acuna or Jet Williams. That's what it would cost, in my opinion. I think that's what you're looking at more, and probably even a low-end prospect at the end of that too. That's what I think that they would ask for. I don't know if they would give it, but I think that's what they would ask for.
I would still consider it because
I think that's what you're looking at.
I would still consider it because look, Chris Gopo saying if we're taking on money, that's too many prospects, Acuna and maybe one other. If we take on all that money, I just don't think it's going to be enough. But here's why I would still do it, Ibby. Because Brad says we eventually have to give up a prospect. These guys are going to be a logjam in these positions.
True.
Look, we don't know if Jet Williams.
Gotta have takers, though. That's the whole thing.
You gotta have takers. You do.
Yeah.
But Ibby, we don't know. Now, look, odds are Jet Williams is a second baseman because he's probably not tall enough to play center field.
Correct.
But we don't know if Jet Williams is a second baseman or a center fielder. We don't know if Acuna is a second baseman or a center fielder. We don't know. He's too far away. We don't know what Carson Benj is going to be, right? We don't know what position he's going to play. Drafted as a shortstop, but can bounce around anywhere because you always draft shortstops. They're the most athletic player on the field. Yep. We don't know if Drew Gilbert's a true center fielder or if he's going to have to move to the corners. Well, if Drew Gilbert has to move to the corners, Ibby, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't the Mets have the 2 corner outfield spots locked up for like a pretty significant amount of time if Drew Gilbert's not a center fielder? Because Brandon Nimmo is signed for 6 more years and Juan Soto just signed for 15. So if you have to, see, it's the combination of these guys that I would give up. See, if you're telling me you got to give up, let's say, Jet Williams and Benj plus Beatty, I'm not giving up Jet Williams and Benj because I don't love Williams, but he's the consensus top 2 prospect on the team, and I think you have to ride that out a little bit. Benj, I don't want to give up because he's the first Stearns guy, and I don't think Stearns is going to want to give up a guy he just drafted.
And he's going to climb up those prospect boards fast.
He's going to move fast. He is a pure hitter. He is going to climb fast. We don't know if he's going to be a shortstop, an outfielder, where he's going to go. Doesn't matter. Super athletic. He's a hitter. He's going to move. But if you're telling me, Ibby, that you have to give up one of, let's say, Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert, well, then you still have Acuna that might slot to the outfield. You still have some things you can move around, and eventually it becomes, like Brad said, a numbers game where you're going to have to give up some of these guys because, look, I hear you. I think it's Chazin that wants to keep a lot of these players.
Yeah.
I'm with you on keeping these guys. They're exciting. It's nice to have these young, homegrown players. They're not all going to pan out. I would love for them to pan out. So far, Vientos might be a star. Alvarez, despite the setback, Ibby, might be a star at least at catcher. I know catching is down across the major leagues in terms of offense, but if those 2 guys have already panned out, the odds of some of these other guys panning out is just statistically very low.
Yeah.
It just is. And I don't mean to piss in anybody's cornflakes when I say that, but it's just the facts, man. Some of these guys are not going to make it. And if you're going to acquire a guy like Castillo, who is a top flight pitcher, you're going to have to give. And if you get 3 years of great starting pitching from Castillo and you gave up a player who winds up becoming something great, it's kind of worth it, Ibby. It's a win-win trade for both sides.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to watch the entire thing play out and how the Mets truly want to attack this market, because I know a lot of people are complaining and whining, and we can start winding down, obviously, because we've hit on a lot of our points so far, and we're coming up on almost 2 hours already, so we'll get out of here shortly.
And I've got to do my Jets show after this in 9 minutes. So
oof, God bless.
If anybody here is also a Jets fan and wants to continue the conversation about from a really exciting team to a dog shit team,
we're trying to keep people. We don't want people to leave us.
Well, we're not doing it on this show. I'm just saying, in a couple minutes, I'm going to switch over and do another one. It's called The Goddamn Jets. You can check us out on YouTube.
It's going to be very interesting to see how David Stearns goes about attacking this market, and I love the passion that everyone has in the comments right now. And I see Chris Scopo, I think it's a new sub, putting out his thoughts a lot when it comes to spending money using the asset that Steve Cohen has in comparison to giving up prospects. And look, I do believe that Stearns wants to spend money. Even though people think that he doesn't, I think he wants to spend money because I don't think he wants to give up these prospects. I think he understands that he has to build something and he has to start churning prospects to sublet some of the more expensive spending. Again, Dodger model, what he wants to become the Met model. You have to have cheaper players that are good enough, to John's point that he's made in previous episodes. The Gavin Lux effects. Not everyone has to be a superstar. Gavin Lux was supposed to be one, wasn't one. Solid ball player, fits in. That's what you're trying to find. Maybe that's Jet Williams. Maybe that's Luis Acuna. Maybe that's Drew Gilbert. Maybe that's Carson Bench. Whatever it may be. Okay, so trying to figure out what he's going to do is so fascinating. But to Carson's point before, his patience is what drives Mets fans insane because we want. You got Juan Soto. I want more. What's next? It's coming. And I'm very curious to see what he ends up doing. But I'm going to go back to what I said before. I chose those three guys in the thumbnail for a reason, that being Castillo, that being Buehler, that being Manaea. I think that those three guys are the top end of what he might be looking at. And I still believe that while he probably wants Manaea at a certain price point, I think Boris is the one that's going to end up blocking that. And that's why I think that Walker Buehler is the guy you're going to end up seeing in Queens. That's the guy I'm putting a stamp on now, saying I think that that's the move.
And I'm going to be completely transparent for a second. We have a Mets content creator group chat, and a lot of great people in there. Myself and Ibby, Ant Rivera from Subway to Shea, Carson from Mets Weekly, Keefe and Key from Shea and Sons, CP, Rocco from the pizza. What the hell's his handle? I always forget it. The Pizza Sports guy, something like that. Yeah. A lot of great folks in there. We always preach patience on this show. We always preach trusting in David Stearns and his evaluations and his methodology, and we stand by that. But even I, last week, said, man, I really want the Mets to do something. Like, it's easy to just get caught up in the whirlwind or the lack thereof, where it's like, I just want to see something happen. I just want to see some movement, even though you believe in the process. So try to stay as patient. Ibby just said it. Patience over panic. The Mets are going to get more players. We can all debate, and I love the debate. The debate on here, the live chat.
John loves debate.
Yeah, I love the debate. Hi, I'm former stand-up comedian John Saponaro. If you want to know what that's about, follow me on TikTok. Anyway, look, I love the debate. I love what this live chat brings to the table, especially from, or whether it's the people who have been here forever, or if it's the new commenters from today, people like Chris Scopo and Chazin and these folks who are just jumping in now, who have a lot of great opinions. Look, whether you guys are right ultimately, or we're right, or there's some kind of nebulous, like we're both kind of right in here, the Mets are going to get more players, Ibby.
They have to. And the roster says they have to.
Correct. And they're also, the Mets are going to be very, very good this year. And that's
pretty good.
The most important part of this. I will answer this question. Andre saying, found it really weird that Arenado has 6 teams that he's approved a trade to and wants to win, apparently, yet he has the Angels on it. I live in Southern California. If you can't win, live here. If you can win and live here, fine. That's why it's part of the reason why a lot of people come to the Dodgers, Ibby. I know Mets fans don't want to hear it. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, grew up in Brooklyn, love New York City, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. It's the best place in the world. I live here by choice. So, if you can win and live here, that's why people do it. If you can't win, at least you get the Southern California weather. That's all I'm saying. I think it's that simple.
And I just want to post over real quick. I know Hobbs been putting out there a lot lately. Sorry that we missed it, but I know you've been putting in a lot. Is trading for Arenado, moving Vientos to first a possibility at 35 years old? It wouldn't take much players for a trade. I am not someone that is wanting of Nolan Arenado, and I don't think that, based off of the metrics and the things that I've looked at in the year that he had and the years that he's been having in St. Louis, not someone exactly that I want on my team from the things that I've read from a clubhouse perspective, coupled with the play on the field. I just don't think it's a fit. And if you're asking me if I would take him, I would still, even if it was for pennies on the dollar and it was cheap as anything, I would still say no, thank you. That's my opinion.
I agree. I've said it on this show and I stand by it. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's likely. If you told me the Mets weren't bringing back Pete and the only option was acquiring a third baseman, whether it's Arenado, Bregman, or dare I say this name, Carlos Correa, give me Carlos Correa. I did the math last week on the show. That one makes so much more sense despite the history. Look, it's not going to happen. None of these things are going to happen. I don't think the Mets are going to have Bregman. I don't think they're going to end up with Arenado. I certainly don't think they're going to end up with Correa. But if you told me they could only end up with a third baseman as a replacement for Pete, go look. I hate to give you guys homework, but go look at the contract for Carlos Correa. It's hugely front-loaded. He's $37 million this year. Then he drops down to 32. Then he drops down to like 25, then he drops down to 20. It's the deal lowers like crazy, and everything beyond this 4 years, this next year and the next 3 is not guaranteed. So to me, that's where you go. If you told me, gun to my head, we had to get a third baseman, he's the best option. He's also the best player of the 3. I know he doesn't play a lot, and I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying I would take him over Nolan Arenado so fast it would make your head spin. I would take him over Bregman so fast it would make your head spin. But yes, just sign Pete Alonso. That's the easiest. That's the best option. And if you don't, like we talked about for probably 40 minutes earlier, then you've got to get a stopgap player or 2, and then you make your push for Vladimir Guerrero next year. I don't want to move Vientos to first. I think Vientos is a third baseman. Do I ever think he'll win a Gold Glove? I don't. But do I think he's good enough to play third base in the major leagues? I do. I think that's the way the Mets should go offensively. AB, we're just about out of time. Anything we didn't get to?
No, I just wanted to bring up Jose Lopez Moya's comment because I know he's always in the comments after the show and posting things about Stearns and signing and money and things. I wish all these crappy rumors would stop. Cheapskate, mini market Stearns won't sign a frontline starter or reliever. Stearns would rather sign a very cheap, low-tier player. Just bring back Alonso. I love having fun with you, Jose. I know that you're one of the people that likes to poke fun, and like we poke fun sometimes too in our chat where it's like, oh, it's Dumpster Dave, it's mini market Stearns, it's all this stuff. But again, you have to be patient. I know you want these things. I know you see Juan Soto and you think he's not going to sign anyone else because it's been quiet and they've been bringing in guys on minor league deals. But again, it's about filling out depth. It's about continuously working through the things that he has and doesn't have within this organization. He's been here for a year. This is an entire process, and it's why I put on one of the things on the banner down below, long-term outlook versus short-term success. Like we want long-term, we want things to be successful over a long period of time. It's not just zeroing in. And if you listen back to what we were saying about opening that window on Pete Alonso, on the idea of Vlad, why it kind of makes sense, why you want those years of 26 to 31 as opposed to 31 to 36. There's a huge difference there. And watching the numbers, and you want the Mets window to remain open. He's going to sign people. Relax. There's plenty of money to spend still. I would not be too focused or hyper-focused on, thinking that David Stearns is here to sabotage the Mets. That's far from the case. He wants them to win, and they're going to win.
What I said all along has bared out to be true, Ibby. I said, despite the fact that Juan Soto is going to, this is before the Mets signed him, despite the fact that he was going to sign this massive deal, probably a record-breaking deal as it turned out to be, I said, you have to almost take that contract and put it aside. And Manny Gomez, who joined us in the first half, basically said that. He said, look, that was a Steve Cohen deal. Steve Cohen, what's the word I'm looking for? Steve Cohen finished that deal. Steve Cohen probably pushed for that deal. And that's not to Stearns' detriment, but if you're David Stearns, you're looking at your boss saying, I want this player, and you're saying, okay. And if you're Stearns, though, you want the assurance that, hey, if we give him a record-breaking deal, because that's what it's going to take, that means we still have to be active. You can't hamstring me financially elsewhere, and you have to get the answer that, no, It's not going to hamstring you. And I fully believe that that is the answer that Steve Cohen gave to David Stearns. And now you let David Stearns do the rest of the work here. And I think that's where the Mets were. I think that's where the Mets are. And I think that's where the Mets are going to continue in the future. So despite the fact that this AAV is maybe in the $55 million a year and the front-loaded deal with the signing bonus and the suite and the this and the that and all the escalators, blah, 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 blah. It's almost like this deal isn't even on the books, Ibby, because it's a Steve Cohen thing that he needed to have, that he wanted to have. And David Stearns, as the employee, facilitated it, helped get it done, but Cohen got this over the line. So after that, you're just looking at, okay, this money is basically irrelevant. Plus, Steve Cohen has made probably half that money back in the stock market in the over a week since they signed Juan Soto.
He did. He absolutely did. Shout out to the 678 of you that are here. Love everyone. Love every one of you. We peaked around 700 this week. Still great numbers. We did fantastic on the YouTube side. I just said that we gained 26 new subs. Trying to hit 30 before we sign off here. If we can, that'd be great. But 26 new subs during a live is probably, I think that's our new high mark in terms of people. So thankful for that. We're getting more and more traction on the YouTube side. Yes, our views dominate on the Twitter side, but we are still growing on the YouTube side. Appreciate every single one of you. Do not forget, next time we are live, make sure your notifications are turned on so you know when it's going to be. Check us on Twitter, check us on Instagram, whatever it may be. We'll make sure that it's updated everywhere. We're going to try our best to get better in other areas besides Twitter as well, but we're working on some things. But just make sure you are locked in. Make sure you turn on those notifications. Next time we go live, I'm going to try to get this ball, the signed Edwin Diaz ball with the certificate of authenticity, out to someone. I'll try to set up on the screen here. We can do a duck race, or we can do a wheel, whatever people want to do, and I'll have all the names on there based off the ones that are here on the live, and type in here or type in entered or whatever it may be, so that I can see you on my end and your name in the participants section of the YouTube studio. Then I will enter you, and we'll find out who's going to be getting this signed Edwin Diaz baseball. For all of you great people that have joined us on this journey, helped us break 1,000, which took forever, but we're already closing in almost on 1,100. It's crazy. We're just at 1,075. We are one sub away from 30 subs in one live. Would appreciate it. One more. Can someone, if I look over here real quick, I know I'm rambling, John. We got 125 people here on the YouTube side. 175. Like, can we get one more sub?
Maybe
before we get out of here? Just
let me say this, Ibby. This is worth saying. Rosie saying happy holidays. Charlie saying great show, guys. Happy holidays to all. Yes. Yeah. Happy holidays to everybody, regardless of what you celebrate, when you celebrate it, how you choose to celebrate it, whatever it is. This is the time of year. Leave religion out of it. Leave all that stuff out of it. This is the time of year where everything should slow down for everybody. And you should take a much, if you're in that kind of, unless you have some kind of crazy job like the one that I used to have, where you're kind of working off hours, this should be a time for you to slow down, exhale, enjoy time with your family, enjoy time with your friends, enjoy time by yourself, with your cat, with your dog, whatever. Do whatever you want to do, because life moves fast. Stuff is crazy out there. And you know what? Just enjoy it. Really, truly, sincerely. We hit the 30 subs during the show. Love that. Ibby, just really quick. Do we have any idea? Because I teased it before. Next Wednesday, Christmas Day. The following Wednesday, New Year's Day. Any idea when we might go live instead? You and I have not talked about this exactly off the air, but any idea if we want to push it to maybe Tuesday or Monday or something like that, move things around over the next 2 weeks to try to make sure that we can do this show for all these great folks out there?
I will double check my schedule, but I think that Monday would probably work best for
both
me.
Weeks.
Probably. I'll double check on the second week, but definitely the 23rd. I think the Monday works a lot better for me because I know I get busy over here on Christmas Eve with stuff to do. And obviously we're not doing it on Christmas Day. So I would say Monday is what I would angle for. I will confirm that with you shortly. And then the following week, maybe it's the Monday again, but that give me a little bit more time on that one. But I would
fair
shoot
enough.
for the 23rd. Yeah.
So that's just, a little bit of where this show might be taking place over the next 2 weeks with the holidays falling on our normal Wednesday. So the best way is to subscribe, turn the notifications on. You'll get an alert that says, hey, listen, this is when they're going live. Also, if you follow us on Twitter, at Til Mets Do Us Part, you follow us on Instagram, at Til Mets Do Us Part, follow us on Blue Sky, at Til Mets Do Us Part.bluesky.app, I believe is how their handles work. Basically, if you search Til Mets Do Us Part, you will find us on all of those apps and on TikTok. Til Mets Do Us Part. Jose Lopez Maya saying, leave Jesus out of it and you'll live a long life in a spiritual dumpster. I wasn't trying to force anybody's religion out of the conversation. I was just trying to make a non-denominational commentary on how you should be spending your holidays, just relaxing and enjoying yourself. Anyway, I'm John. That's Ibby. Shout out to our guest this week in the first half, Manny Gomez. You can follow him at MannyGo3 on Twitter. He works for NJ Advance, Star Ledger, NJ.com, covering the New York Mets. Does a great job. Hopefully we'll have him on again. Shout out to John Mincone and everybody over at the Brella Sports Network. Like I said before, I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. We'll see you next week. Peace.